Adrian Carton de Wiart, the man who couldn't be killed. Imagine being shot in the face, the head, the stomach, the ankle, the leg, the hip, the groin, and the ear. Imagine losing your left eye. Imagine having your left hand blown off by artillery, and when the doctor refuses to amputate your mangled fingers, you rip them off yourself with your bare hands. Imagine surviving 2 plane crashes. Imagine tunneling out of a prisoner of war camp when you're 62 years old with 1 eye and 1 hand. Imagine fighting in 3 major wars across 6 decades. And then, at the end of it all, imagine sitting down to write your autobiography and saying, "Frankly, I had enjoyed the war." This is not fiction. This is not exaggeration. This is the true story of Lieutenant General Sir Adrian Carton de Wiart, a Belgian-born British officer who became known as the unkillable soldier. A man so tough, so fearless, so absolutely insane that he pulled grenade pins with his teeth and threw them with his 1 remaining hand. A man who was wounded so many times that the hospital kept a pair of pajamas waiting for him. A man whose life was so extraordinary that even Winston Churchill was amazed by him. By the end of this video, you'll discover how an aristocratic law student became one of the most battle-scarred warriors in military history, why he never mentioned his Victoria Cross in his memoir, and how a 1-eyed, 1-handed 62-year-old man survived a plane crash and then tried to escape from Italian captivity 5 times. Stay with me, because Adrian Carton de Wiart's story will redefine what you think is humanly possible. Part 1. The Aristocrat Who Craved War, Early Life and the Boer War. The story of Adrian Paul Ghislain Carton de Wiart begins on May 5, 1880 in Brussels, Belgium. He was born into privilege and aristocracy. His father, Leon Constant Ghislain Carton de Wiart, was a prominent Belgian lawyer with connections to the highest levels of Belgian society. His mother, Ernestine Wenzig, was of Irish descent. There were even rumors, never confirmed, that Adrian was an illegitimate son of King Leopold II of Belgium. Adrian grew up in a world of wealth and comfort. He was sent to boarding school in England and later attended Balliol College at Oxford University to study law. He was expected to follow in his father's footsteps, to become a lawyer or diplomat, to live a comfortable, respectable life. But Adrian had no interest in that life. He was restless, bored, and craving something more. He later wrote, "I felt a sense of profound frustration. I knew that the courtroom was not where I belonged." Then in 1899, war broke out in South Africa. The Second Boer War had begun, pitting the British Empire against the Boer republics. Young men across Britain were volunteering to fight. Adrian saw his chance. At age 19, Adrian dropped out of Oxford without his father's permission. He was too young to enlist legally, the minimum age was 20, and he wasn't a British citizen. So Adrian lied. He enlisted under a false name, Trooper Carton, and claimed he was 25 years old. He was accepted and shipped to South Africa with Paget's horse, a cavalry unit. For the first time in his life, Adrian Carton de Wiart felt truly alive. He later wrote, "At that moment, I knew, once and for all, that war was in my blood." But war wasn't romantic. During his first engagement, Adrian was shot twice, once in the stomach and once in the groin. Both wounds were serious. He was evacuated to a hospital and spent months recovering. Most men would have been satisfied. They had seen combat, been wounded, and survived. They would go home. Not Adrian. As soon as he recovered, he transferred to the 2nd Imperial Light Horse and returned to the front lines. He fought through the rest of the Boer War, earning a commission as a lieutenant in the 4th Dragoons. When the war ended in 1902, Adrian had proven himself. He had tasted battle and survived. And he wanted more. Part 2. The First Mutilations, Somaliland, and Losing an Eye. After the Boer War, Adrian Carton de Wiart remained in the British Army. He had become a British citizen in 1907 and was now a career soldier. But for over a decade, he saw no major action. He trained, he served in various postings, but there were no wars to fight. Then came November 1914. Adrian and his unit were attacking a dervish fortress at Shimberberis. The fighting was fierce. Machine gun fire tore through the air. Adrian was advancing when he was hit twice, once in the arm and once in the face. The bullet to his face destroyed his left eye and tore off part of his left ear. Adrian collapsed. His comrades rushed to him, blood poured from his face. The pain was excruciating. A doctor examined him and said there was nothing he could do to save the eye. He would have to be kept with the unit until it was safe to evacuate him. One of Adrian's fellow officers, Lord Hastings Ismay, who would later become NATO's first Secretary-General, was there. He later said, "He didn't check his stride, but I think the bullet stung him up as his language was awful. The doctor could do nothing for his eye, but we had to keep him with us. He must have been in agony." But years later, Ismay said something else that revealed Adrian's character. He honestly believed that he regarded the loss of an eye as a blessing, as it allowed him to get out of Somaliland to Europe, where he thought the real action was. Adrian Carton de Wiart had lost an eye, and he saw it as an opportunity.
Part 3. The Glass Eye and the Eye Patch. Getting to the Western Front. Adrian was evacuated to England to recover. Doctors fitted him with a glass eye. Adrian hated it. He found it uncomfortable, irritating, and pointless. So one day, while riding in a taxi, Adrian rolled down the window and threw the glass eye out into the street. From that day forward, Adrian wore a black eye patch. It became his trademark, his signature look, a one-eyed soldier with a fierce reputation. But Adrian wasn't done fighting. He convinced a medical board that he was fit for service and demanded to be sent to the Western Front in France and Belgium, where the real war was being fought. In May 1915, Adrian arrived at Ypres with the 4th Royal Irish Dragoon Bards. On his very first night, the Germans launched a massive artillery barrage. Shells exploded everywhere. One shell landed near Adrian, and shrapnel tore through his left hand, shattering the bones. Adrian was rushed to a field hospital. A doctor examined the hand and determined that 2 fingers were hanging by threads of skin, mangled beyond repair. But the doctor hesitated. He didn't want to amputate without more evaluation. Adrian, in agony and furious, took matters into his own hands. Literally, he ripped the 2 fingers off himself. Later that year, surgeons decided the damage to Adrian's hand was too severe. The entire left hand was amputated. Adrian Carton de Wiart was now a one-eyed, one-handed soldier. Any reasonable person would have been medically discharged, but Adrian convinced another medical board that he could still fight. And, incredibly, they agreed. By early 1916, Adrian was back on the front lines, now commanding the 8th Battalion, Gloucestershire Regiment. And that's when he earned the Victoria Cross. Part 4. The Victoria Cross. Battle of the Somme. On July 2nd and 3rd, 1916, during the early days of the Battle of the Somme, Adrian's battalion was tasked with capturing the heavily fortified German village of lled. The village was a fortress, bristling with machine guns, trenches, and barbed wire. The attack began. British troops advanced across no man's land under withering fire. Men fell by the dozens. 3 battalion commanders were killed almost immediately. The attack was faltering. Adrian Carton de Wiart took command. With one eye and one hand, he led the assault personally. He ran through machine gun fire, shouting orders, directing his men. When he needed to throw grenades, he pulled the pins with his teeth and hurled them with his one remaining hand. His soldiers watched in awe. This one-eyed, one-handed madman was charging German positions as if he were invincible. For over 48 hours, Adrian led the attack. He organized positions, ensured supplies reached the front lines, and personally led counterattacks when the Germans tried to retake lost ground. He passed through artillery barrages that should have killed him a dozen times, but Adrian didn't flinch. The village of Les Boisselles was captured. For his actions, Adrian Carton de Wiart was awarded the Victoria Cross, the highest military decoration in the British Empire. The citation read, "For most conspicuous bravery, coolness, and determination during severe operations of a prolonged nature. It was owing in great measure to his dauntless courage and inspiring example that a serious reverse was averted. He frequently exposed himself in the organization of positions and of supplies, passing unflinchingly through fire barrage of the most intense nature." But years later, when Adrian wrote his autobiography, he didn't even mention the Victoria Cross. When asked why, he said, "It had been won by the 8th Gloucesters. Every man did as much as I have." Part 5. More wounds, more battles. Surviving the impossible. Adrian's war didn't end at the Somme. Over the next 2 years, he fought in some of the bloodiest battles of World War I. Battle of Passchendaele, 1917. Adrian was shot through the hip. He survived and returned to duty. Battle of Cambrai, 1917. Adrian was shot through the leg. He survived and returned to duty. Battle of Arras, 1918. Adrian was shot through the ear. He survived and returned to duty. And then there was another incident at the Somme. Adrian was leading a night attack when a German sniper shot him through the back of the head. The bullet entered the base of his skull and exited through the front. Adrian collapsed. His men thought he was dead. No one survives being shot through the head. But Adrian did. Miraculously, the bullet had passed through his skull without hitting his brain or any major blood vessels. He was unconscious for a few days, but eventually woke up and, once again, returned to duty. Adrian's personal servant, or Batman, a man named Mr. A.H. Holmes, later told the BBC, "I don't know how he survived. The bullet went clean through his skull. But 3 weeks later, he was back at the front." By the end of World War I, Adrian Carton de Wiart had been wounded 11 times. He had lost his left eye and his left hand. He had been shot in the face, head, stomach, hip, leg, ankle, groin, and ear. He had been mentioned in dispatches 6 times. And the nursing home where he recovered after each injury kept a pair of pajamas ready for him because they knew he'd be back. When the war ended in November 1918, Adrian wrote in his diary, "Frankly, I had enjoyed the war." Part 6. Between the Wars. Poland and the Pripyat Marshes. After World War I, Adrian didn't retire. Instead, he was sent to Poland as part of the British military mission. Poland had just regained its independence after over a century of being partitioned between Russia, Prussia, and Austria. But the new nation was under immediate threat from Bolshevik Russia. Adrian served in Poland from 1919 to 1921, advising Polish forces and participating in combat operations. He loved it. The Poles admired him, and Adrian felt a deep connection to the Polish people and their fight for freedom. When his official military duties ended in 1921, Adrian retired from active service. But he didn't leave Poland. A rich Polish prince, Karol Mikołaj Radziwiłł, became Adrian's close friend and gave him the use of a massive estate called Prostin, in the Pripyat Marshes, a wetland area larger than Ireland. For the next 18 years, Adrian lived like a feudal lord. He hunted, fished, and enjoyed the wilderness. It was the closest thing to peace Adrian had ever known. Part 7. World War II. Norway. Plane crashes and capture. At age 59, Adrian Carton de Wiart was promoted to Major General and given command of British forces in Norway. In April 1940, the Germans invaded Norway, and Adrian led British troops in a desperate defensive campaign. The campaign was a disaster. The Germans had overwhelming air superiority, and the British forces were evacuated within weeks. But Adrian had fought bravely and earned yet another commendation. Then, in 1941, Adrian was given a new assignment. He was to travel to Yugoslavia to coordinate with Yugoslav forces resisting the Germans. Adrian boarded a transport aircraft, a converted bomber, and took off from Egypt. Over the Mediterranean Sea, the aircraft developed engine trouble. The plane went into a dive. Adrian and the crew braced for impact. The plane crashed into the sea near the Italian-controlled coast of Libya. Adrian, now 61 years old, with one eye and one hand, found himself in freezing water. He swam to shore using only his one arm. Italian soldiers were waiting on the beach. Adrian was captured and taken prisoner. He spent the next 2 years as a prisoner of war in Italy, first at the Villa Orsini at Sulmona, then at a special prison for senior officers at Castello di Vinciliata. But Adrian didn't accept captivity quietly. Part 8. The Escape Artist. 5 Attempts for Freedom. At Castello di Vinciliata, Adrian was imprisoned with several other high-ranking British officers, including General Sir Richard O'Connor and Lieutenant General Philip Neame VC. The 4 men became friends and committed themselves to escaping. Adrian was 62 years old, one-eyed and one-handed and covered in scars. But he refused to sit quietly. Escape attempt number 1. Adrian and his fellow prisoners began digging a tunnel. For 7 months, they tunneled under the prison walls. They were finally discovered just days before they planned to escape. Escape attempt number 2. Adrian tried to climb over the prison wall. He was caught. Escape attempt number 3. Adrian disguised himself as an Italian peasant and managed to slip out of the prison during a confusion. He evaded capture for 8 days, wandering through northern Italy. He was 62 years old, didn't speak Italian, wore an eye patch, and had one empty sleeve. Somehow, he managed to avoid detection for over a week before being recaptured. Escape attempts number 4 and 5, the details are unclear, but Adrian made at least 2 more attempts, both unsuccessful. In total, Adrian Carton de Wiart made 5 escape attempts from Italian captivity. Finally, in 1943, the Italians decided to release him as part of a prisoner exchange. Adrian was 63 years old when he was finally freed. Part 10. Churchill's Representative, China and Retirement. After his release, Winston Churchill personally appointed Adrian as his special representative to Chinese leader Chiang Kai-shek. Adrian traveled to China and spent the rest of World War II in the Far East, advising and coordinating with Chinese forces. In 1945, Adrian witnessed the Japanese surrender at Singapore. World War II was over. Adrian finally retired from the British Army in 1947 at the age of 67. He was given the honorary rank of Lieutenant General. During his nearly 50 years of military service, he had been awarded the Victoria Cross, Knight Commander of the Order of the British Empire, KBE, Companion of the Order of the Bath, CB, Companion of the Order of St. Michael and St. George, CMG, Distinguished Service Order, DSO, Poland's Virtuti Militari, France's Croix de Guerre, and many more. Part 10. Happy Odyssey, Final Years and Legacy. After retiring, Adrian settled in County Cork, Ireland. He bought a Guinness house in Macroom and lived there peacefully with his wife. Despite his advanced age and numerous injuries, Adrian remained active. He fished, hunted, and enjoyed the Irish countryside. In 1950, Adrian published his autobiography titled Happy Odyssey, The Memoirs of Lieutenant General Sir Adrian Carton de Wiart. Winston Churchill wrote the foreword.
The book was remarkable for what it didn't mention. Adrian never mentioned his Victoria Cross. He barely mentioned his injuries. He wrote in a light, almost humorous tone, as if his extraordinary life had been perfectly ordinary. On June 5, 1963, Adrian Carton de Wiart died peacefully at his home in County Cork. He was 83 years old. He is buried at Killingish Churchyard in Ireland. Conclusion: the meaning of Adrian Carton de Wiart. So, what can we learn from the life of Adrian Carton de Wiart? First, that courage is a choice. Adrian wasn't born fearless. He chose to face danger again and again. Second, that physical limitations don't define capability. Adrian lost an eye and a hand, but he never stopped fighting. Third, that attitude matters more than circumstances. Adrian was shot, blown up, captured, and injured countless times, and he said he enjoyed the war. And finally, that true heroes are often humble. Adrian earned the Victoria Cross but didn't mention it in his autobiography. He gave credit to his men, not himself. Adrian Carton de Wiart fought in 3 major wars across 6 decades. He was wounded 11 times, he lost an eye and a hand, he survived 2 plane crashes, he escaped from POW camps, and he lived to be 83 years old. He was truly the unkillable soldier. Thank you for watching. If this story inspired you, please like, subscribe, and share this video. Until next time, remember what Adrian Carton de Wiart proved, that the human spirit, when tested, is stronger than anything the world can throw at it.